I'm Nikisa Sineth, and this has been Amari and I's story and my truth. Wrapping this series up, I would like to ask that you keep in mind as you listen, watch, and potentially learn from this series that this story is not simply a crime story, and honestly, nor is any. But this, it was my son's life. It is his legacy, and it is my survival. And today, as I share these words, it is also his birthday. My eldest born son, Amari Rayshawn Barnhill, would have been 13 years old. So I ask you this, not just as a narrator, but as his mother. Please join me in celebrating and saying happy heavenly 13th birthday to my sweet Amari. You are eternally loved, and son, I hope you know that your legacy has and will continue to live on. My family, friends, and I have formulated some question and answers in order to fill in some gaps that you all may have.
Question 1. How come you think your dad and stepmom wanted your son? Why did you turn them down? And why do you feel they're behind your CPS case?
I genuinely feel that it was about control, and that nor was it of any concern or care for myself or Amari for wanting to, as they said, help. It was just another level and form of manipulation and control that they tried to exercise in my life. It's painful to recall, but due to the situation, the allegations, and how it was all handled, I don't believe that that was in Amari or I's best interest, nor did I feel that even them asking for me to relinquish my parental rights was in I or Amari's best interest. I, even at 16, felt that I was competent, and even though I wasn't really ready to be a mom, I was fully capable of being Amari's mother. And so I did. Being around children my entire life, because he owned and operated a daycare since as early as I can remember. So I've been around children for forever. I felt that I could take that on and not have so many issues, because I did know some majority of the basics for taking care of a child, even though I didn't full on have one at that time. But yeah, I believed that I was more than capable of handling it, as well as I genuinely feel that my father was experiencing shame or some type of issue because of me being a teen mother. He was a person all about his image and what affected him. So without relinquishing my rights, he wouldn't basically be able to tell anyone or present Amari as his son. He desperately wanted a son. And with Amari carrying my last name, well, our last name, he kind of could have presented that image. And so once I fully took on being a mother, that kind of infuriated him, I feel, or rubbed him the wrong way, as well as the proof's kind of in the pudding in part 2. it did show that in 2012, the daycare was voluntarily closed. Um, that is the year that I became pregnant, and in December is when I gave birth to Amari. So during that time is also when him and his now widow first moved out of Florida. And it's like, you're moved out of Florida, so you kind of want me to be an absentee mother for you to be able to have my child and raise him how you see fit when you weren't even that active in my own life. It never really made sense to me.
Even reflecting now, it all felt more like retaliation than concern. How the entire situation was handled. Similarly to when only 4 months after Amari's murder, my stepmom continued to contact me despite trying to set clear boundaries that I wanted nothing to do with her. She continually tried to force communication. And so I'll leave it to you witnessing these emails of what you'd think or feel reviewing them.
Are you glorifying being a teen mom, or do you regret being a teen mom to Amari?
I'm not glorifying anything, especially not that. I'm simply telling my truth, and that is what that was the hand I was dealt, basically. And I was able to be a mom who happened to be a teen mom. In no way, shape, or form do I ever regret Amari. He was literally my light. With and for him, I grew up with him, and I grew up for him as well. Even though I only got to, for a little bit of time, grow up with him. He's the reason I did mature in a lot of ways, mentally, emotionally, physically. With my pregnancy is what I'm referring to physically. He is how and when I became a mother. And I'm grateful for that.
How old was everyone at the time, and who were the people involved?
Okay, so I became a mom to Amari and a mom at the age of 16, and he was murdered when I was 19 years old. Amari's father was 21. His father's then girlfriend was 20. Ella was 2 months old. Amari was 2 years and 11 months. The two other children involved in this, which was Amari's two younger sisters from his father and his father's girlfriend, was 3 months. The oldest was 3 months younger than Amari, and the youngest with them was turning 1 year old 11 days after the murder of Amari. So yeah, all of the adults were grown and the minors were babies. And his mom and his sisters and brother, I'm not sure of their exact ages, but again, every one of the adults were grown and mature and able to take ownership of their actions. And then for myself, my sister that named Amari, she actually turned 27 on the day that Amari was murdered.
You said people originally assumed you were present for what happened. Why? Where were you? And how did you handle people judging you when everything first aired?
Okay, so we're gonna have to break that one down. So people often assumed that I was there due to the misinformation and sort of vagueness that was presented when Amari's story aired. Originally, it stated how his father, Amari, and other children and a mother were present with his untimely death when he was just considered the unidentified toddler found in Hollybrook Apartments. And before my Facebook posts and things of that nature, people weren't sure and didn't know for certain that it was referring to Amari. As well as when I first seen it, I actually saw the original news clip in the hospital. And when people were asking me, I at that time wasn't even aware that Amari was the unidentified toddler that was found. That was shortly before I was broken the devastating news myself. And so I did end up confirming, and my family members confirming that indeed was Amari. And for how I handled it initially, I was very defensive, very angry, very confused. But during the entire time, I tried to keep the spotlight on Amari, that yes, he's not unidentified, he's not unloved, it's none of that, that he's my son, I cared about him, and that I'm now facing life without him. And that's like when I corrected the information about his age and his middle name. I'm very happy that I stood my ground and went and sought out being able to, well, not sought out because the comments and the things were there. However, that I stood my ground and I let people know the truth as much as I was able to at that time in his investigation in the process. Even though then and still kind of now to this day, I don't know the specifics of what all took place that Amari endured, but I do know the facts of that he was beaten to death and that he's no longer here and that I had no involvement in it. And so, yeah, I kind of just stood my ground to strangers of that I was not present and I didn't know what happened, even though the news might have said a mother was there. I wasn't the mother that was present.
Why do you think he murdered Amari?
That's a loaded question. We can speculate all day long. There will never be any excuse or answer or reason that could ever make sense to me. So whether it was altruistic, acutely psychosis, spousal revenge, unwanted child, or fatal maltreatment filicide, none of it will ever justify what he did and that he ended Amari's life. It was truly heinous and heartbreaking when he could have simply called me in order to come pick him up, and I would still have a healthy, happy, and alive son who would be 13 and here with all of his siblings.
His then girlfriend stated she didn't want to overstep boundaries. What boundaries did you have in place with her, and why did you have issues with her?
So, her and I never really had a conversation prior to Amari's demise. Amari's father and his paternal side was often bone carriers and keeping up drama or issues between all parties involved. So I presumed she had issues with me based off of what he told me, and she presumed I had issues with her based off of what he told her. They had a shared Facebook page back then, so I would receive messages not knowing whether it was from him or her, and sometimes when he wanted to be petty, it would be where he would put, "This is from me and her." So it was always childish, immature little mind games and things like that. But in regards to taking care of Amari, like, love is love. If you're around my child, don't neglect him, help him, and be there for him if he needs it, which she said she did. So I didn't have any issues with her. At that time, I honestly presumed she had issues with me based off of he was still sleeping with me on and off. We would get into our little fights, and he would say that she had issues with me because I had his first son, that I had moved and came back into town. Like when I said of the pettiness, that he would say, "This is from me and her." When I told him of us moving, he literally said, "Well then, bleep, move. No one cares, and that's from me and her." And it's like, okay.
Did his paternal grandmother ever state why she sent Amari to his house when he was supposed to be at her house?
Okay. With this question, there are a couple things I need to clarify. So, Amari's father at this time did not have a house. He was at 2 locations. The first being Amari's grandmother, paternal grandmother's home, and then the second location of being his then girlfriend's apartment. At no point have I ever had any conversation to affirm or deny how this situation went. But again, Amari's father was a grown adult with 3 children. So I'm not sure how involved his mother was with how things were for when Amari was going with him or wasn't. And that's not my place to assume. But I do know that during a conversation that when I was about 8 months pregnant with Amari, there was a conversation with both of my parents, my mother and my father, my middle sister, the one who named Amari, as well as his mother and him, that came to my mom's living room, and we had a sit-down conversation to discuss how and what life would look like moving forward once I gave birth to Amari. And my mom and his mom made a point to say how when Amari was in my care, that my mother would be present as much as she could be and help to make sure Amari was safe and secure. And then Amari's paternal grandmother also agreed and said that on her end it would be the same.
How did you handle grief while still having to be a mom and battle court cases?
So I definitely did not have the luxury of breaking down. I did have a support system and sometimes people who would be involved in spurts that helped carry me along with my faith. But my main support was my mother. So overall, I still had Ella, who was depending on me. And so I had to fight on, as well as I had to fight for justice. Just like in that sentence or statement that I posted on my Facebook that the news had aired. I fully intended and accomplished seeking justice for Amari Rayshawn Barnhill. And so with grief, it was a little bit easier once the court case and everything was over, with when I focused on writing my book and everything. But for me, with that process, it would be in silent moments to myself at night, crying and talking to God at church and in the court hallways, because court would literally be 2 to 3 times a month just for 5 to 10 minutes for them to say it's being passed or whatever was going on at the time.
How did it feel having to face him in court and still having questions and then reading victim impact statements?
So for me, my victim impact statement was where I had to put my feelings and the unanswered questions sort of to the side and allow my voice for Amari to stand. I tried to make sure that Amari was at the center of everything, and the love that I have for Amari was at the center of everything during that entire process, from having to plan his funeral and writing his obituary to writing the victim impact statement. I made it reflect his love and his purity, everything that I instilled in him. And it was hard because even though I looked at him, he never looked at me. And it's like, I don't know if he couldn't or wouldn't or what, but he never looked at me as I made my statement. And that was a part of my journey. Like, I never really got answers from him, or like I said before, an apology, any type of closure or anything. All of that was stuff I had to find and seek on my own.
Did you feel as if his then girlfriend played a part because she was there the entire time this happened and didn't step in or interfere?
So originally, I did have those feelings, and I was under the impression that she was there the entire time. And so I am a person who believes that if you're there, even if you don't touch him, like, if your party is witnessing or seeing this, I believe in if you see something, say something. And that if you don't say something, that silence is complicity. However, I did learn, as well as she did try to say it when she would make like statuses and things of that nature prior to us talking, how she actually wasn't there the entire time, as well as Amari wasn't in her home the entire time either. Amari came to her home, it would be like a Saturday, I believe is when she said that he came. So at that point, Amari had been with his dad for a period of time. And so he came to her home and was around her children and like his siblings from her from Saturday, and he was killed on Wednesday. That's a shorter period of time than the entire, it was what, like 7 to 9 days that he had him. And so I do have some anger towards myself for how harshly I judged her, just like as harshly as others judged me during that period. But she was, like I said, 20 at the time. She had under two, as well as my son being in her home. And she was also doing, I believe she was like in a trade school or something, or going to be like in cosmetology school. She was also working. And so like she was not present at every point from that Saturday to the Wednesday morning that he was pronounced deceased. And yeah, even in text messages between he and I that I went back and looked at, he even said at a couple of different points how she wasn't home, so she wouldn't know. So yeah, that gave me a little solace and peace on this journey, that she didn't have that big of a role in this situation. But she did inform me that she did try to perform CPR when Amari's father woke her up. She did cry and pray and try to be there for my son until the ambulance arrived. So I am grateful for that.
How has communication with the paternal side been since his murder?
Minimal to none. And those bridges can't be rebuilt. And I'm okay with that for my peace. There's been like social media stuff of where they would like to speak on me, and or where I'm asked in interviews to speak about things, but we don't have communication. They still hold grudges to me for their reasons, and I'm just continuing to move forward.
How come you laugh and smile in so many of your interviews? Why, when your son has died? Are you happy? If so, how can you be happy your son was killed?
So I'm an open book. I literally wrote 3 and working on more. I'm an open and honest person. I can smile and be happy because even though I experienced a tragedy and a deep pain, it didn't and doesn't erase my humanity. I'm still a mom and a person even if I wouldn't have had more kids, or just have had the one that I had at the time of Amari's passing, which is Ella. I can rest and have peace in the fact that I didn't have anything to do with Amari's demise and why he's no longer present on this earth. And I currently, and since his death, kind of exist in a state where I'm floating along between the pain of his death and the joy of his life that he had with me. And so that's the part of him that I try to carry on every day. And through my different ventures and titles in life that I carry.
During the final call between you two, what did you guys talk about?
So hindsight is always 2020. So he was a little weird during the phone call. That's kind of where I have a good bit of my questions, because it's like during the call, I even pointed out to him how I could hear his children, his two daughters, but I couldn't hear Amari. And so that's when he continued to say that Amari was asleep. So then I would ask questions of like, well, was he in trouble? Did he do something? Then he made the comments of like how Amari's strong and really strong for his age. And I'm just like, his name means strength. And yes, he's stubborn like you, referring to his dad, as well as me, his mom. But he's still an almost 3-year-old little boy. Like, I understand. But like, it very much was confusing and weird. But then he like stated how Amari didn't want to eat. But he didn't really go into details of that, like he punished him for it or anything. So all of that was, again, news, and where I wasn't prepared for any of that. But then he would bring up other stupid things of like, he asked me, did I wish Ella was his? He asked me, did I miss us being together? Basically things of like trying to put us back on an intimate level of like trying to go back to us fooling around or speculating about us fooling around. Because he did try to ask me for sexual pictures and things of that nature, but I did not comply. And I feel like that also kind of enraged him a bit, or is a part of what happened. But yeah, when we did focus back on Amari, however, he was saying that he was going to try to see Amari more. He even was asking if he could have more time with him and not return him on November 18th, which I was adamant about. No, I need to see him, and he needs to be able to be home with me for a little while. And then I was going to send him back over there to spend time and be where Amari could be present for his youngest sister from them's first birthday party. But that time and day never came, but Amari was not able to be here for it. Now we're going to do some question and answers with my husband in order to kind of recap for everybody how life's been in the aftermath of Amari passing.
What key moments would you like to share happened for you between Amari's death in 2015 to 2022?
Okay, so a lot happened in that time frame. Let's start with Amari's funeral and death. So I kind of touched on this in part 2, but his funeral ended up being on November 18th, the day that he was supposed to have returned home. But instead, I had to have his funeral service and his homegoing service. I ended up having to plan, pay for, and make everything happen for that to happen. And it was very painful. At 19 with a 2-month-old, to figure that out and have to do that. As one of my last public things that I felt that I should do or needed to do for him with that was that I did a liturgical, or what is also like a praise dance, because I shied away from one of my gifts, which is dance, as well as I shied away from my writing. So it's like once he passed, I stopped doing things that other people had told me in my life that I should do, or that were things that I should be in a box, basically, and not exercise all of my gifts. I unchained myself and started to indulge and pursue all of my talents, not for anybody else's gratification or anything, but as my ways to heal and to pour into myself and to have a way of talking to my son of like, you're not here, but I'm doing this in honor of you. I'm using my gifts to honor your memory and your legacy and the little boy that I instilled so much love and happiness with. And that helps me remember and reach the happiness that I shared with him in the moments that we had together. And then in January of 2017, we got justice for Amari. That was a process. I was very happy for court to no longer be multiple times a month, not having to see him and his family, because it would usually just be me showing up to court. Even that day was a lot. Then I got married to my first husband in 2018. Then we were going through our issues and with distance, not truly being there for each other, mistrust, dishonesty, miscommunication, and intimate partner violence. Our story ended up unraveling, and that kind of mirrored all of the inner turmoil that I was going through during all of this time, I was continuously being a mom to Ella that had ran through the entire time. I lost my dad in 2020. And that's when I went through a lot of things as well. I experienced a sexual assault. I experienced 3 miscarriages, as well as a stillborn son from that first husband that I was talking about. Our long divorce process. And then, just all of that was kind of at my lowest low. With my father and him passing, I found out that he hid a property from me that my grandmother had left me with her passing. And he literally told me how I didn't deserve the property. And so that's why he didn't tell me about it, because I wasn't able to take care of it or to value it. So that was another betrayal I was experiencing during that time. I was mentally and emotionally just kind of on autopilot and in survival mode. Marriage on the rocks, mentally all over the place, trying to find who I am and figure out life, and going through the grieving process. It was a lot, but I made it.
What does it feel like when people speculate about your grief and your son's case?
It makes me sad and angry, because it's like, where's your humanity? You're not the Almighty. You're not God. You're not anybody who has any power over the situation, over me or anything. But I get it. People talk, but it's like, you haven't been in my shoes. You haven't experienced the loss of a child, and preferably you don't. But like, if you have, you wouldn't be acting in that manner to lash out with your words to hurt someone. And it's like, what gives you the right to kind of play judge and jury, or to speculate about someone's life or anything? Because it's like, if I was a mentally or emotionally weaker person, I would want to fight you. I would want to harm you. And it's like, I just accept that and have to move on about my day and about my business. But I've experienced the negative comments, the hate tweets, I've literally gotten hate comments on my books, people telling me that I'm money hungry and I'm trying to monetize off of my son's death, or capitalize off of my son's death. And it's like, I accepted, and I had no choice to accept that my son's dead. I can't revive him. I can't bring him back. I simply don't have to deal with the pain of, I'm not the cause of what happened to him. And so honoring his memory and the child that I had the chance to experience, I deserve being able to experience happy moments and stuff again. And life goes on. I am here. Even though he's not, I am the person that created him, with him being born into this world. And I can give my love and my light to other people that deserve it and that are here to help me grow and prosper in this life as well.
How did Amari's life and his death become a catalyst for your advocacy?
So, Amari, in many aspects, is my reason. He was the reason that I learned and became a teen mom and then just a mom, period. Because he was my firstborn, as well as he was my first experience of a loss of a child being murdered. I experienced a miscarriage, but I've never experienced like my child physically being here, having made it to Earthside, spent months and years with him, and then all of a sudden I have to reframe and picture life now, and in none of those chapters actually include him. So I have to daily realign and figure out what being a grieving mom, being mainly his grieving mom, looks like on a daily basis. And to be able to be the light in the book of his legacy and his memory to my children, my husband, my family at this point, and as well as to the world. Like, literally with my nonprofit, that's the main way that I keep and have actively kept his memory alive, and for who he is and was to the world, and mainly to me, because everybody else doesn't get to experience him the way that I did.
Speaking of your nonprofit, what was the vision behind founding Amari's Earthly Angels, and what all have you done with your nonprofit?
So, with Amari's Earthly Angels, the main goal behind that and my main mission for my mission statement was to bring filicide awareness. And it's because the news, most people literally did not have any clue about what filicide, the title, is or was. Most people don't label it the proper way. I know with news outlets and stuff of that nature, they don't address it and categorize it as it should be. And with the subcategories especially. And so it's like, for many people in the community that I've been a part of, had no idea about filicide. When I told them the word or would give them the education, they're like, wow, what? Why do we not know about this? Like, we hear about, oh, a child was unalived by a dad or by a mom or because of this. And with the cases make news, but the actual proper labeling of them isn't also in the headlines too. And for many people, especially in my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, I was the case that, because of my research and doing this, that I was bringing it to being more of a everyday table conversation and getting more people familiar with it. And so, like, that was the main mission, to provide education and awareness and to provide warning signs and different things of that nature, for bringing it more to the forefront of the world and to the community at large.
What is Filicide Awareness Week, and why was it essential for you to create it?
So, before I answer this question, I'm going to answer the second part of the first question. because you did ask me, what have I done with my nonprofit? I forgot to answer that. But with my nonprofit, I've done several things. I also founded the holiday that you just mentioned of Filicide Awareness Week. I did that through my nonprofit organization and myself as a mom. But I've also done not the very first Christmas after Amari's death, because he did pass away like a month before Christmas in 2015. But the second Christmas after his passing, and once I had a little time to kind of grieve and start to work through and accept that he was gone, because the very first Christmas I held on to his toys and simply cried. But by that second Christmas, I had my very first Christmas of love in honor of Amari. And my community and my former church family in Florida showed up for me and showed out for me, because I actually was ran over. My physical body was ran over by a vehicle. It actually was an acquaintance of the paternal family of Amari. And the gentleman, Brandon Adams, harmed my body, and I was very sore. And I literally, even though I had the ability to have came up with all of the funds and did fundraisers, and people donated to me, and I was able to have thousands of clothes, shoes, and toys for children, I physically was not, and mentally was not truly able to move around, as well as we had food to be able to serve the people to carry out the event. And many people, especially a woman who was a member with me at the old church that I attended, Miss Katrina Hope, she actually stood with me and was like, "You're not canceling this event. You're not making it smaller than what it needs to be. I'm going to support you. I'm going to help you." She literally let me get in a chair that had wheels on it. They pushed me around and everything in order for the event to be carried out. And it was a very beautiful event for the 2 years that we had it. Then life kind of got crazy for me, and I stopped putting the events on. But I have blessed children and families since the years that I have stopped carrying out the actual event. Then I've also done little events in my hometown of Jacksonville, again, for providing awareness, as well as for National Day of Remembrance for homicide victims. I'll do candle lights and different things to bring together families, not necessarily of just filicide, but all of those who are in the grieving family of homicide or of child loss from various things. Those are many communities that I'm very entangled with, and I appreciate that, because it's a community. They understand in many ways what I'm experiencing, and the shared pain transcends age, race, color, creed, all of those things, financial statuses, and that's something I'm thankful for. And so then with Filicide Awareness Week, that again, the main goal is about education. And so in the month of April, which is National Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month, I did go ahead and do it where the second week of April, the full week, would be able to be recognized as Filicide Awareness Week. And I've done that in Florida, and I was working with other moms in other states to try to get it to catch on. However, we've only had it, I believe, in 2 other states, but I don't remember exactly where at this time. But I'm going to, again, start to push that again and trying to work with that to continue to move that forward. Because filicide happens a lot more than what anyone would think or like to admit. And honestly, even just one, it makes my stomach turn, because all of it can be preventable. Like, all of it is preventable. There are warning signs that happen that are various, and we owe it to our children. And literally, like, that's one of my mottos with Amari's Earthly Angels, is to save a child because I couldn't save mine.
Many viewers who come to find you or see what's available about you based on previous interviews you've done, like the most recent with the true crime YouTuber, or the interrogation videos of Amari's father and his then girlfriend. What would you like to say about that experience and to those viewers?
Hi again, I'm Nikisa Sineth. So I appreciate you taking the time out to come and research and find me. That's happened a lot lately. I kind of open myself up to that possibility, and sometimes it's bittersweet when that does happen, because I do know that every time I do accept an interview or someone talking about Amari's case, it's kind of a double-edged sword of, like, it can either be someone like the former question that I had that's trying to speculate about my grief or judge me and have these harsh things to say and come with this harsh narrative that they've concluded because they know so much about my case, when I don't even know what happened directly with Amari besides the cold hard facts. And then there's the other side of the aisle where some contact me in order to say they're proud of me, or that they see me and they love me or are rooting for me because my son smile and that he looks just like me. Not that I look just like him, I made him. That with our shared smile, that it touched them and that their hope I'm doing the best I can in life, and how can they support me? How can they reach my books? How can they continue to support me and find me in the new avenues of life? And those I love, appreciate, thank all of you for those. Those are great.
What shift happened for you in 2022?
So it came after being in a few years of experiencing like what felt like my lowest of lows. After all of that, my father passing, trying to reconnect with my ex-husband and thinking we can save our marriage, then continuing with the long drawn out process of our divorce. During that process, I had reached out to my second church home in Jacksonville, and my pastor and my first lady ended up talking to me and letting me know like that if my marriage can be saved, it would take both of us. And so I started taking better care of myself mentally, emotionally, physically, trying to basically see if our marriage could be saved. And then when I saw that my now ex-partner was not putting forth that same effort at that point, I started just doing it for me to better myself, because either way, at the end of the day, even whether he left or stayed, which
I'm glad at this point that he left and we separated. But at the end of the day, that I needed to be whole and I deserved to be whole for myself as well as for my children. And at that time, that included my stillborn son, Abdul, my heavenly son as well, Amari, and my miscarriages, and mainly Ella. Like, she experienced and had to witness me going through all of my different trials and tribulations of not only Amari's death and not really understanding or knowing, because again, she was only 2 months at the time. So it's like she had a way of knowing, but she didn't really have a way of understanding or communicating her understanding of what's going on. And so I felt that I owed it to her mainly to be as whole and happy and on a path to healing that I could be. And I'm happy that I did that, because it literally started to change everything in my mind. Like, I no longer had the suicidal ideations and no longer of trying to not want to be here anymore. Like, it gave me more of a backbone to affirm and know who I am and who I can be, and that until the day I shut my eyes, I have a chance to be better for and to everyone involved in my life. And that included me, because in my head, I was my worst enemy.
How has your parenting through grief changed since Amari's first passing to now?
I think it's gracefully blossomed, even though that's very much a nice way of putting it for myself. Because in the beginning, it was, I don't know what to do, but I'm gonna still do it. I was just, like I said, kind of in autopilot, being in survival mode and just making it through every second by the grace of God, just carrying it on, moving forward. However, now, because especially in the beginning, it was like, I've never had a child at that point live past the age of 2 years and 11 months. And then it was like, okay, so I kind of breathed a sigh of relief when Ella made it past that age. But then it's like, okay, now we're really in uncharted territory here. You not only haven't had a child live past this age, you've never had a girl be this age. So then it kind of became holding my breath about something else. So it kind of puts you in a state of seeing how fragile life is and acknowledging that to move forward, and then just appreciating it, like embracing all of the emotions and the feelings. And then with the child that I have, she's kind of so in tune to me and things of like, when I'm upset or when I'm happy, she'll literally like ask me like, oh, I see you're crying because of this. Like, are you okay? And we'll have conversations, and I'm able to express to her and explain to her for her age understanding of like, today's a bad day because it's Amari's birthday, or mommy's feeling away or grieving because this reminded me of your brother. But it's happy tears, it's tears of reflection, but it's also sorrow of wishing and hoping that he could have been here. And so that's taken on different forms now, especially that I am remarried, have more beautiful children, and things of that nature. So it's like, as each of them continue to get older, it's a
beautiful thing, but it's starting to develop into a beautiful progression of myself and my journey with my children.
How do you keep Amari present in the home without letting trauma define your children's memories?
Okay. So we do not really watch the news in our home. We monitor and censor what we expose our children to first and foremost. So we don't allow them to go on the internet and just do whatever they want. So we're trying to make sure that they're exposed to what happened to Amari in an age appropriate way, and that we first have those conversations, because I live in a completely different state. The main child who knew about Amari and experienced Amari for even just a short time was, again, Ella, and how she's only 10 years old. So it's where we're able to kind of guide her through and show her pictures and things to say, like, this was your brother and things of that nature. And with the younger ones, we're kind of show them pictures and stuff as well. And then as they get older, explain to them why Amari's not here and that he's still with them in their hearts, that they're still his siblings, and kind of just keep it that way. But we do honor him with our wedding anniversary being on his heavenly birthday. And so literally, because he's 13 today, we are literally celebrating our 30-year wedding anniversary. And so we have our family's birthday and his birthday on the same day, as well as for his death anniversary, which is also my middle sister's birthday. I let them know that was your aunt's is your aunt's birthday, and that it's another year that signifies when he was taken from us. So we either light a candle or talk about him or do a balloon release or something of that nature. And then we do something fun as well, to not just stay stuck and stagnant in the fact that he's no longer here. And again, this is also because I have young children. So it's like, I don't want them to have the stigma of, oh, I have to be sad and only sad about my brother. No, he was an innocent baby. He was very happy. He wouldn't really know why you're just boo crying in a corner about him or about anything. So yeah, just trying to keep the balance, because that's the worst thing, is to have someone, especially a child, feel like that's the only mindset that they can have about a situation.
Tell us about your books. What are they about and why did you write them?
So far I have written and published 3 books. The very first one, that one, whew. So with the process of Amari's death and everything, and especially when the news plastered my statement everywhere of I'm gonna seek justice for all involved, trust, that sent a wildfire when I did announce that I was going to be writing a book. Everyone initially thought it was going to be some type of revenge thing, or that I'm going to go into gory details of what happened or everything that I knew. It was so many people taking my story and like what their perception of me was at the time, or what they thought they knew of me, and basically trying to tell my story. Or saying what my story was going to be about. And it's like, it was kind of a shock and a letdown for those people when it's like, my writing is another baby to me. Writing has been something that I've always done or wanted to do because it reaches another level of healing for me, where I get to sit down and write out or speak and put out all of my thoughts and my emotions and what I'm feeling, thinking, wanting, and have no judgment. I don't have to show it to anybody. I don't. I can journal. I can be myself and say whatever I want to say, do what I want to do, create what I want to create. And through all of the, yes, sometimes dark moments even, I chose to highlight and create a piece of work that I felt could honor and build the memory of Amari. And then secondly came, I'm sorry, I don't even believe I said the title of the first one. So the first one was The Active Filicide, the Amari Barnhill Story. And so I had poems. I even included a poem from my teenage best friend. And she became, well, that was like her first published poem, poem that she performed and did for me because she wasn't able to make it to Amari's funeral. And she instead had asked her mom to come, and her mom was a support to me on that day. So yeah, it was collective works of poems, just journalings, other cases, talking somewhat about Amari's case, explaining filicide and documented reasons. Also, where I included like my letter and things that were to Amari's father, because I never have spoken to him since the phone call for him telling me to go to the hospital. And I don't desire to ever really speak to him again, so that I let the world in on that letter in order to be, again, like a form of healing and to get it out. So yeah. And then secondly was Heaven Didn't Wait, Healing, Grieving, and Surviving the Post the Loss of a Child. And that one was kind of like my grief handbook. And it's like where I showcase to others, especially like if someone's experiencing grief or some like a loved one of theirs is experiencing grief, it's kind of like, here's a little handbook and a little nudge into how to support them or to be there and be a love giver to them during this devastating time, because you're not going to always know what to say. And you don't need to be a person who's just throwing out platitudes, which a lot of people, especially within the Christian community, can do. And so being that I was a person that experienced and was on the receiving end a lot of those platitudes, I kind of wanted to put that out there so that it can help someone get a little bit more education or awareness of like, hey, maybe this is not the thing to say, or this, because sometimes it is very okay to just sit there and be with them in silence, and just sometimes your presence is enough in letting them know that you're there and you're there to be with them even through the thick of it. And it doesn't require words or money or things. Like, it can be a simple gesture of I know you don't want to get out of bed. I can go do the dishes, or I can take care of the kids for you if they have other kids, or like, because grief is something that everyone experiences, and you experience it in different ways, whether it's the loss of a job, the loss of a home, all things that I've experienced on top of losing a child. Like, so it's where I specifically wrote about the loss of my child and children, but it can be in any area or avenue of loss that you've experienced. And then thirdly, was naked and bare, femme vulnerable. And so a little known fact is that while I was at Stanton, before I graduated, I was in the French Honor Society. And so I did take French. And so I did kind of throw that in there with the subtitle of my book. And so it's where I disclose when I talked about the years that were where I was coasting by and in autopilot and trying to figure out life and being in survival mode, while also kicking myself and feeling like I was a failure as a mom, a wife, and a daughter, because my father passed away before we had an opportunity to speak about our relationship. And at that time, I was no contact with him. Then with going through a failing marriage that ultimately failed. Then also going through the multiple losses and miscarriages that I experienced of my children, and only having at that time Ella living and being in my life. So I disclose of like that shift that we spoke about, of how it transitioned for me through my faith and growing, that I ended up being gentle with myself and knowing that I didn't fail, that life isn't a pass or fail type of thing. In different things, you grow, you level up, it changes, it develops, it's this, it's that. Like, it's not just one thing or one certain thing. It can be multiple things at once. And that's kind of what I dove into in my sort of memoir. And so, yeah, it's also a double entendre because it's NB, which was also my maiden initials, Nikisa Barnhill, Naked and Bare. And so, yeah, those were my 3 babies, and I'm very proud of myself for all of my works. I do, like I said, consider them extra children, or also attributes and things to my children. Yeah.
Is there any new projects or books that you're working on?
Yes. So the main one and the only one I'm going to currently speak about is the collaboration book project that I'm working with other parents of surviving filicide, and being able to share and join together all of our testimonies and experiences in order to shine a light of, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person that experienced this, and they're not alone. They're not the only ones that experience this. And to be able to speak up for ourselves and not be pushed into a corner and be so befuddled and downtrodden with shame and guilt and things of that nature. Like, no, we experienced and survived something brutal that happened, and we're not weak. No, our traumas didn't make us stronger. We made ourselves stronger. Our faith made us stronger. us being humans and having humanity and finding an avenue to be able to continue to put one foot in front of the other every single day is how we got stronger. And we're willing to speak up and talk about our children and talk about our experiences and how life has moved forward. Because for many of us, it's multiple years or in time that has passed, and yet we're still continuing to keep our children's name alive, continuing to honor them, and no matter big or small, it makes a difference.
What inspired you to unite other surviving parents into one book?
That's kind of going back to what I said of that they're not alone and I'm not alone. It's because of constantly feeling like I was alone that I wanted to go ahead and do that, as well as in the market. I don't believe there's where multiple, because there's few and far between of where I've heard about or have in my collection of where parents even want to or do say something of what happened to their child. And so why not create the opportunity and avenue for other parents to do exactly that?
What responsibility does the media or public have when consuming stories of child loss?
So I feel that it's their responsibility to be mindful and give grace for situations and circumstances. Don't just immediately jump to conclusions and get basically like Twitter fingers, because it's a lot to process, as well as with themselves, give them grace and stuff, because it's a lot. This is one of the main reasons why I don't, and in my household, we don't participate in watching the news actively. My last time purposely continuing to watch the news was during Amari's process, and like with his death and the journey of that. I would basically sometimes only turn it on just to watch me, or I would just turn it off and other people would let me know that they saw me on the news, of that they saw my interview or whatever. But it's kind of like sometimes it's a double-edged sword. Some people take it to an extreme and are doing it for unpure reasons and motives, and sometimes it's where it becomes like narrative and media exploitation versus being a genuine conversation or something that's keeping the victims or their families in mind and being there for them during what often is the worst time of their lives. And so, especially with children, people are very protective of their children. And that's rightfully so, because most of the time they're not able to protect themselves, especially if they have passed on. And so in my situation, especially, I felt like I had no control. I didn't have control over what happened to Amari. I didn't have control over the media taking my post and saying things about them. I even with my pictures and photos and videos of Amari, the very first ones when they found out who Amari was and things of that nature, they stole all of those videos and pictures from my social media. All of my, what I felt and thought were private, even though I put it on a social media site, then became plastered everywhere, right beside the mugshot of Amari's father. And so it's like, okay. As well as for many situations, they were constantly showing his father's mugshot. So then that's when I chose to ask, like, if you're going to be someone who's sharing things about Amari's story, please make sure you keep it centered of that he's the victim. Let's not too much try to talk about his dad. Like, what's going to happen with his dad is going to happen. It's what it is. He took him away from us. Let's keep the focus on the sweet little boy. Like, let's show that. Let's all the pictures that I paid for that the media feels entitled to share and show to the world. So we're sharing and showing him. We're going to continue to, and let's keep the focus on him. So like, I really had to, and I really feel like the world should keep that in mind when it comes to different people sharing and showcasing about things that have happened to children, especially.
Why is it important for you not to include the crime scene photos or autopsy images, even though you have them?
So it was important to me to not include all of those images, even though I did include some, because it's about the exploitation line that I was talking about earlier. And this entire project, yes, was created for a sort of entertainment level. It was also thought of and conceived for educational purposes, awareness purposes, and basically to also have a visual representation of my truth and my side of the story. But it's like, this is my life. This is what I'm experiencing and what I'm going through. I've, as Amari's mother, seen all of it. And yet it's not my burden to share or to potentially publicly scar basically scar someone else or their journey or life because of what I'm going through. I don't have that right to put that on someone else, nor do I want that right. And so I'm continuing to shoulder that. And that's something I'm going to, and I do privately process and work through. But it's about a respect thing as well. Like, I'm not going to ever relinquish all of those things that I have that are the last parts of Amari that I have. And I'm not going to put them out there for my child or someone else's child to stumble across and have to work through. It's about still a certain level of respect, a certain level of love, a certain level of honor and care during the entire process. Because it's not, none of this is for money. None of this is for because I owe it to anybody. None of it is about that. It's not to prove anything to anybody else or myself. This is honestly where I am in my healing journey. That 10 years later, after doing countless other interviews with other people, one that I've been paid to do, doing interviews with magazines from other countries, the UK. Like, I've done things for other people, but this is where on my channel, on my platform, I'm finally able to fully speak out as much as I would like, to be able to have the control to put together and formulate what is going to be digested by others, to give y'all a peek into my life or what I've gone through and how I've stood the test of time. That's sort of been the purpose of this project and where I am mentally, emotionally, and every other aspect.
What does healing out loud mean to you, and how is your life now?
So healing out loud for me is where I'm fully walking in my truth. I'm boldly standing and or sitting in this case and letting the world know this is me and my current everything, current mindset, current healing process, current emotions, all of that. And still saying, even though I'm not perfect, that I'm here, I'm taking up space, I'm me in essence, and basically being like, take it or leave it. For those who choose to leave it, that's perfectly fine. For those who it resonates with and they choose to continue to watch or to be involved in or have access to my life and loving me, my family, then thank you. And it kind of just is what it is. Like, I endured for so many years and different things in silence. And like, especially with Amari's case, even though I knew certain things and I've known the facts since close to the beginning, I couldn't speak on certain things due to his case being ongoing. And so during the time of January to December in 2017, as well as from 2015 to 2017, I kind of viewed it like I had a muzzle on and I wasn't able to say certain things. I wasn't able to prove certain points for like when the paternal side would come on my social media or say things or have other people come at me to say things or question me. And it's like, I'm here. I'm taking up space. I don't owe it to anybody to prove anything, but this is where it is. And so that's kind of like the explanation of what healing out loud means to me. And then for my life now, I am a happily remarried woman. I am 29 years old, about to be 30 next year. Big milestone age. I'm a big girl. I have a wonderful husband. We have 4 beautiful children together. We have Ella, who is my biological child, and she is our sports child. Sweetest little thing. Then we also have Sophia, who's my wonderful bonus baby, and she is 8 years old. I love her entire life. That's our little fashionista. Then we have our interesting, get into everything tomboy little girl, and her name is Anaya. She is 22 months old. So yeah, she's right on the verge of being the big 2. So again, another moment where I'm holding my breath. And then last but not least, we have our son, D3, and he's the sweetest little personality. I love him. That's mama's baby right there. And he is 7 months old. And we have a beautiful family. We are navigating through parallel parenting and co-parenting for our co-parents, for our oldest 2 that are from other people.
we are just navigating life. We are a normal family. We have different activities and avenues and stuff that we find. I'm just loving being a mom, as well as I'm a full-time college student. I'm currently working towards being able to get my degrees to be a grief and trauma therapist. I'm just trying to push forward and continue to allow Amari's legacy to live on through me and be a light to others and extend my hand, because I've been a person that's experienced suffering.
What do you want the world to remember most about Amari?
That he was loved, that as many people had presumptions that he was constantly abused or mistreated, those are false. He was not abused his entire life. For majority of his life, was and acted as a single mother when I was pregnant, even though he would see me at the hospital due to taking his other child's mother for her appointments. I went by myself and or with my mother during the entire process. I celebrated 2, almost 3 Christmases and birthdays with him, of loving on him and raising him up, with my own resources and support system, and leaning upon my faith. And even though he was only 2 years and 11 months old, he was handsome, sweet, smart, mannerable, gentle, and yet still strong. He was stubborn. He was funny, shy, and my little gentleman that I was beginning to raise. He would even open doors for my mom and I. And I just wish that I had the opportunity to see the young man that I was raising and who he could have become.
What do you want the world to understand about you?
My goal, or hope, is that one day I would be able to eradicate the additional suffering that comes along with opening up and telling my story, of the instant judgment or people trying to play detective with my pain and our story, because I wasn't there. I wasn't involved. I'm hurting and confused, and yet still having to walk through and experience this grief. And it's painful, but I'm here and I'm doing it. And I was literally on the opposite side of town with my newborn daughter. It was a process. I did experience and witness his sort of naivety about parenting, and that is where I tried to ask him to take parenting classes and birthing classes in order to allow Amari to have his last name. He chose not to. That is why Amari had my last name. So that's the reason that it turned out that way. And for Amari's entire life, I was the main one who took on the responsibility of raising him and guiding him in his short-lived life.
I never did witness Amari being abused or hit on or anything of that nature by his father, but due to that, there was an instance in our relationship where he did become violent with me. I did know that he had an aggressive nature and with how he handled things, but never in a million years did I think that that would mean it would turn out with him doing what he did to Amari. And just having issues between he and I doesn't mean that he's going to instantly do something to our child either.
What do you want to say to parents walking a similar path?
Firstly, that you're not alone, but also, and this kind of goes for not just parents who've experienced filicide, but for anyone who this resonates with or that has experienced the various chapters of my life of different trials and tribulations of like PCOS, miscarriages, stillbirth, sexual assault, child loss, experiencing mental health issues, being 5150'd, parent loss, divorce, single motherhood, teen pregnancy, teen parenthood, and overcoming statistics. I want to say to you all, or to all of you, your trauma isn't what makes you stronger. Our traumas made us traumatized. Let's get that clear. And it made us weak, fragile, and humans. It gave me countless sleepless nights, tossing and turning, memory loss, and it gave me feelings and thoughts that I never wanted for myself. But it's by the grace of God and with my faith that I've been able to carry on and have made myself stronger, and God made me stronger to be able to look into the mirror, pray, and daily drag myself out of the darkest moments and being in the lowest of lows, dealing with the consequences that I don't even fully understand and that weren't even my fault or yours. So I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this. My dearest gentle viewer, your brokenness is not your fault. However, your healing is your responsibility.
And lastly, once this documentary, you've taken the time to plan, execute, edit, and publish for the public, when their screens fade to black, what truths remain?
That after 10 years, I'm finally ready and have been finally ready to push myself and create this as another gift and memoriam to my son, to Amari, to fully tell his case and my truth. And this time it's in another way, as my first book was the very first way. But that this was something that I've longed, hoped for, and to do, and that I'm truly proud of myself to have finally accomplished it, and to visually have captured and presenting our story to the world and anyone who stumbles across this. And that I'm able to release this final piece of our life on what would have been his 13th birthday. As the facts still remain, Amari was murdered on Wednesday, November 11th, 2015. That was 10 years ago. The person who was responsible for, arrested, and convicted of this crime was Amari's father, making this case paternal filicide. Amari suffered internal bleeding, a gash on the head. He was whipped with objects like a black plastic sandal flip-flop from the hair store, and it left marks all over his face and body. Not only was his butt, which was also ripped raw, but all of those details are things that I only learned after a nurse told me in Wolfson's Children's Hospital once they informed me that he was dead. And despite having talked to his father that very day and being denied the ability to speak to Amari and to have had a chance to say a goodbye or see you later, besides the date that I dropped him off 8 days before
he experienced his final days alive.